Kennywood Park is one of my favorite amusement parks located in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. The park may be relatively small compared to other amusement parks as it only spans 80 acres of land, but they use every single inch of land they have. The park is home to 8 roller coasters and 45 rides in total, which for me is enough to justify staying an entire day. After a rocky start to the 2010s, park management has really gone above and beyond to make sure this is one of the best parks in the area. One of the reasons I love it so much is because it feels like it's the perfect combination of a classic amusement park mixed with modern day thrills. And it's all topped off by the amazing culture of Pittsburgh. The last publicly documented figure for attendance at this park was in 2010 at 2.1 million visitors per year, and that's likely even higher now. So you're going to want to plan when you go here. Fortunately, I've been to this park over a half dozen times, and I know everything you're going to want to do when you come here. Before we jump into all the important information about this park, make sure to give this video a like if you'd like to see more informative amusement park content, and subscribe if you'd like to be the first to see any of my new videos. With that said, let's do a quick history lesson about Kennywood. Kennywood is only one of 2 amusement parks designated as a National Historic Landmark. The park opened in 1898, making it 125 years old. It started out as a trolley park and was family owned until 2007 when it was sold off to Parques Reunidos, which is a Spanish amusement company. For a long time, people did really not like this transaction because the new owners sought to exploit the park's prime location by adding big new prototype thrill rides, while corporatizing the park as well, which was a turnoff to families who had gone to the park for generations. Even though the addition of new thrill rides sounds like a good idea, maintaining the park's classic identity was even more important to guests. The anger toward the owners peaked in 2020 when the park announced that they were removing 4 classic attractions, including Kangaroo, a ride that was the only one of its kind left in the world and a staple to the park's identity. Fortunately, park management has listened to the complaints of guests in the past few years. They brought back a refurbished version of the ride and have looked to restore the park to its former glory. Throughout the past few years, the park has almost been completely refurbished into a modernized classical amusement park that thrill seekers and families alike can enjoy. Now is the perfect time to start planning your trip. The first thing you'll need to do when planning a trip to Kennywood is figure out where you're going to stay and how you'll get in. My go-to hotels near the park are the Holiday Inn Express in West Mifflin and the Holiday Inn Express in Moon Hall at the waterfront. The waterfront is a dining, retail, and entertainment complex that contains an open-air mall, so you have plenty to do when you aren't in the park. There's also a bunch of other hotels near the waterfront, so there's plenty of options that are all about a 15-minute drive or less from the park. Now let's talk about how you get into the park. For tickets, prices can vary a lot depending on what day you go and when you buy them. If you buy them for a Saturday, they'll probably be closer to $60, but on an off-peak day, they'll run you around $40 to $45, but keep in mind these prices can fluctuate. If you visit more than once in a year, you'll probably want to purchase a season pass. Season passes will start as low as $100, but will cap out at around $230. There's 4 different types of passes that each have different benefits, like being able to visit other parks in the chain like Lake Compounce or Idlewild Park, free drinks, discounts, and bring a friend free tickets. The lowest tiered passes will have blackout dates, so keep that in mind. If you plan on visiting multiple times in a year, you'll have to break down which benefits are worth it for you for the prices they are listed at. The lowest level pass does not include events like Phantom Fall Fun Fest or Holiday Lights. Admission to Sandcastle Water Park just down the road is only included with the Platinum Pass, so you may want to consider that as well. However, keep in mind that most of you would just be purchasing a one-day ticket. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Kennywood is a well-attended park, so you'll probably be hard-pressed to find a day where most of the rides are walk-ons. But on weekends in the summer, especially Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we'll give you the best shot to avoid long lines. Days with bad weather in the forecast also will scare crowds away, so if you're willing to take the chance, I'd go for it. But you do run the risk of the park closing early or not opening at all. The park does offer a rainy day guarantee, so you will get a return ticket if the weather gets really bad. Most days at Kennywood, you'll encounter some lines, but they're usually manageable if you know what rides to get the longest lines, which I'll be discussing later in the video. When you arrive at the park, you'll be greeted with complimentary parking, located across the street from the park. And if you are a gold or platinum pass holder, you'll be able to park closer to the entrance in the preferred parking lot, or you can just pay an extra fee if you don't have one of those passes. The parking lot is on a hill, but there are escalators that'll take you down to where the park entrance is. The park does allow food and beverages into the park and smaller coolers and bags. According to the park, they can be no larger than 15 inches wide by 15 inches tall by 15 inches in length. After you get your ticket scanned and head through security, you'll walk down a hill and under the road adjacent to the park. This will take you through the park's iconic tunnel, which is one of the coolest ways to build up hype for your day. Once you come out of the tunnel, you'll be greeted by a skyrocket on your right and steel curtains straight ahead. Now that you've bought your tickets, parked your car, and gone through security, let's talk about some of the rides and attractions you can experience at Kennywood. I'll be covering every ride that I think is worth experiencing at the park, so I'll skip over some of the smaller attractions. But if you'd like the full list of rides, make sure to check out the park's website. First, let's talk about the roller coasters. This park has 8 roller coasters, and I think they are all worth checking out. The tallest coaster in the park and in the entire state of Pennsylvania is Steel Curtain, an absolute beast of a roller coaster that opened back in 2019. This ride has the most inversions of any roller coaster in North America with 9, so be prepared to flip upside down a lot. A preliminary concern that I had when first riding this coaster was if I was going to get nauseated or sick after riding. But the engineering on this ride is pretty solid and they manage the forces perfectly. So there's rarely anyone getting off it throwing up or saying that was too much. Oh, and the coaster is also themed to the beloved Pittsburgh Steelers, so it's crazy popular with the locals and Steelers fans like me, of course. The second tallest coaster in the park is Phantom's Revenge, a Morgan hypercoaster that used to be a giant arrow looper. The ride first opened as Steel Phantom and the first half was identical to what it is today, but the second half featured 4 inversions. The ride was refurbished in the 2001 offseason by D.H. Morgan Manufacturing, and it now has a bunch of ejector airtime hills and quick turns instead of those inversions. This coaster has some of the best pacing and airtime in the entire country, and the use of terrain is magnificent, like many of the other coasters at this park. The roller coaster that Phantom's Revenge actually drops through is Thunderbolt, the park's largest wooden coaster and the first of the 3 you'll see. This roller coaster opened up as Pippin in 1924 and the layout was expanded for the 1968 season. The ride doesn't feature a lot of airtime unless you're sitting in the back, but it has a lateral heavy layout and the drops are surprisingly big because of the terrain usage. The park's oldest operating coaster is Jackrabbit, which is just about the first roller coaster for every kid in Pittsburgh. This coaster is another one that makes good use of the terrain as it's only 40 feet tall, but it features a drop of 70 feet. The layout is relatively mild other than the double down, which provides some great ejector airtime that makes you fly out of your seat as the only restraint you have is a seatbelt. Racer is the park's racing wooden coaster and it's another classic. I definitely recommend sitting in the back row on this ride as the buzz bars allow you to get some decent airtime as the train gets pulled over the hills. Although this ride isn't the most thrilling coaster out there, the focus on interactive elements makes up for it, so make sure someone in your group rides on the opposite train as you. The train also parks on the opposite side of the station as it started, so this is a rare Mobius loop coaster. The only launch coaster in the park is Skyrocket, the first ride you'll see as you walk through the tunnel. This Premier Rides manufactured coaster is quite underrated as the launch has some great kick to it, the big drops have good airtime, and the inversions are very whippy. The only thing that I wish was a bit better was the ending for this ride, as it's paced really poorly, but other than that, it's a great ride. The park's indoor coaster is Exterminator, which is a Reverchon wild mouse. On paper, this ride isn't much, but when you put it indoors, you can't see where you're going for the most part, so it makes it a little more of a guessing game, so the forces might surprise you a little bit. There's also some decent theming, but nothing too crazy. The smallest roller coaster in the park is Lil Phantom, which is the park's kiddie coaster. It's fun, but you might have to wait in a long line if you want the credit. In addition to the solid collection of roller coasters, the park has a well-rounded collection of flat rides of varying thrill levels. I think there's a few must-do flat rides at this park, so let's talk about those first, and then I'll talk about a few supplemental attractions that you should do if you have time. The absolute must-do flat ride at this park is the Kangaroo, the last remaining flying coaster flat ride in the world. And like I mentioned earlier, it was actually removed following the 2020 season, but it was brought back after a refurbishment due to popular demand. Each car is connected to an arm and metal track, and there is a hill at the top of the track where you'll actually detach from the track and it'll give you a pop of airtime. Although the strength and abruptness of the airtime has decreased since the refurbishment, the aesthetics are much better, and there's even a sound effect after each car goes over the hill. The biggest flat ride in the park is Black Widow, the Zamperla Giant Discovery. I'm personally not the biggest fan of this ride, as for whatever reason, I found it extra forceful and quite dizzying compared to the other variants of this model, but it still gives some amazing views of Phantom's Revenge, the Monongahela River, and the rest of the park. Swing Shot is a cookie cutter scream and swing from SNS, providing some great airtime in either a view of the parking lot or the park, depending on which side you sit on. Aero 360 is a Zamperla Hawk ride with good hang time, and the ride was customized to have 2 Kennywood arrows on each end, which I love. However, I will warn you that this and Black Widow tend to be closed more often than not. Another one of my favorites is Whip, which is an old school flat ride where the premise is just whip you around the end of an oval that the center of the ride is shaped in, giving you some good laterals. The Turtle is another one of a kind classic that I'd also recommend checking out. It's just a really weird ride where the cars of the ride are on a track and you spin and slide around the car because there aren't any restraints. It's a really unique experience and I'd recommend taking it for a spin. Most of the other flats are pretty typical, like Wave Swinger, Music Express, Pirate, a Zamperla Disco, and an antique car ride among some others. The new ride for this year is Spinvasion, which is a Zamperla Gyfron. I haven't had a chance to ride it yet, but it looks pretty intense as you sit in an inverted position and the ride spins around in a circle and then it moves up and down at the same time. Also, if you'd like to see everything else that is new at Kennywood in 2023, make sure to click the iCard above. The must-do dark ride at the park is Noah's Ark, which is a walkthrough attraction on a rocking boat with all kinds of goofy tricks. It's just a really fun experience that I think it's worth checking out. I don't think there's much like it anywhere in the world, so it's definitely something special. Another classic is Old Mill, and to be honest, there's not a lot to this ride. It's got a cool old school western theme, but it's basically just a Tunnel of Love ride, and that's really all there is to it. Ghostwood Estate is the park's shooting dark ride where you help the deceased owner of a mansion rid the place of other ghosts that are staying there. The 2 water rides at the park are Raging Rapids and Pittsburgh Plunge. These are both just run-of-the-mill water rides, with one being an Intamin River Rapids and the other being a Shoot the Chutes model. If you have young children, you'll want to check out both Kiddieland and Thomastown. Kiddieland is a classical themed kiddie area with typical kiddie rides, while Thomastown has some slightly larger attractions, making for a well-rounded assortment of rides. A big staple of Kennywood is their food. There's a lot of good places to eat around the park, so I'll be sharing my top picks as to what you should get if you choose to eat inside of the park. Primanti Bros is the newest stand inside of the park, and here you can find some of the most iconic Pittsburgh cuisine. These sandwiches are filled with a meat of your choice, cheese, coleslaw, tomato slices, and french fries between 2 pieces of Italian bread. If you've never had this before, I'd recommend you check it out. Rogue Barbecue is another great place to grab a quick meal as they serve ribs, pulled pork nachos, and wings. However, if you ask anyone who's ever been to this park before where to eat, they'll most definitely tell you the Potato Patch. The Potato Patch is easily the most iconic dish in the entire park. Hot, fresh cut fries with some cheese drizzling on top of them, all topped off with some bacon bites. Definitely something you shouldn't miss. If you're looking for some more simple options, there's a Johnny Rockets inside of the park and the all-new Pizza Warehouse. If you haven't had a breakfast or just want something to drink early on in the day, stop at 1896 Coffee Co. They serve warm drinks and donuts to get your day started off the right way. Remember to save room for dessert because Kennywood is filled with great places to satisfy your sweet tooth. The 2 places I recommend hitting are Star Refreshment Stand by Steel Curtain or the Golden Nugget right near Kiddieland. Star Refreshment Stand has classics like soft serve ice cream, funnel cake, and deep fried Oreos. The Golden Nugget has the most famous dessert in the park with the square ice cream cones dipped in chocolate with your choice of topping with the cherry on top. If you like to grab something on your way out, Candy Kaleidoscope is right next to the tunnel so you can get your fix of things like fudge blocks and candy apples. When visiting a park for the first time, it's important to have a plan of attack for the day. I'd recommend showing up for park opening, but it's not going to wreck your day if you don't. Always make sure to check the park website to see what the hours are like as they tend to vary greatly from day to day or month to month. Now let's talk about one of the most important decisions of your day. What ride should you go to first? I think there's 2 ways you can go with this decision, but keep in mind Kennywood is a relatively small park, so getting to the back quarter of the park from the front entrance tunnel won't even take you 10 minutes. There's 2 roller coasters that tend to build up lines fast. Those are Exterminator and Steel Curtain. Exterminator mainly builds up a line due to its poor capacity, while Steel Curtain is very popular and suffers from slow operations. However, if Steel Curtain is on 2 trains, which it has been a lot more recently, I'd say Exterminator should be the ride you head to first. However, there's always a chance that Steel Curtain can break down during the day, so if you can't live with the possibility of missing this attraction, you may want to head there first. Unfortunately, these 2 rides are on opposite ends of the park from each other, so you really have to choose one or the other. Luckily, you won't really have much of an issue with most of the other coasters getting longer lines, maybe with the exception of Skyrocket at the very beginning of the day. You can also skip lines altogether using the park's Fast Pass system, Speedy Pass, which is one of my favorite skip the line systems at any park. This system is very similar to the Flash Pass that is used at most Six Flags parks. Speedy Pass is a multi-tiered system that allows you to reserve your place in line digitally from your phone. There's 3 tiers, those being Elite, Premium, and Standard. Standard will allow you to reserve your spot in line, giving you a return time countdown equivalent in length to the actual line. Premium will cut that length in half, and Elite will cut it by 90%. Prices will vary based on crowd levels and what day of the week it is, so I'd recommend checking the park's website before you go. But the prices typically start around $60 for Standard, $80 for Premium, and $125 for Elite. However, there's one thing that I absolutely love about this system, and that is that you can purchase a single skip the line for any ride. This works perfectly when 1 or 2 rides happen to have a very lengthy line and the rest of the park is relatively quiet. In order to access this, make sure to scan one of the QR codes around the park advertising Speedy Pass. Also, you can save the website link on your phone, which will allow you to check wait times in the park whenever you want, even if you don't buy anything. If you learn one thing from this video, definitely take advantage of this system. Kennywood is a great park with a lot to do, but it's not one that you need to have an overly strategic plan for. A day at Kennywood is always a good day, and I really hope all of you get the chance to visit this park in the future. If you learned something from this video, please feel free to leave a like and comment if you'd like to see more of these types of videos as well. Also, if you have any other tips to share, leave them in the comments too. Now, with all that being said, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Good night.